Chair, conference, fellow Social Democrats, good to be here. The Way Ahead, that's the title, and we picked it because on a long march, it's a good idea at some stage to put your bags down, take a rest, and have a look over the ground you've covered and towards the destination. So let's start at the start. I don't mean 1981. I mean 7 years ago. Can you put your hand up if you attended the 2017 SDP conference in Birmingham? That's three of us. That's three of us. Now, on that day, there were 15 people at the conference. The SDP was on life support, kept alive by members who wouldn't be here but for them. We had about 60 members, no money, virtually no votes, no regional organisation, no governing rule book, barely any election capabilities. We had a long history, and we had a registration with the Electoral Commission, but we had no clear political philosophy. So be under no illusion at all, rebuilding the party has been a phenomenal task. So we started at the logical place and built some foundations. And the first was the party structure itself. The SDP is a democratic party with an elected leader and a member-controlled national committee and member-controlled regional committees. And you can't pretend to be a democratic party. You either are or you are not, and we are. The second foundation, I think equally important, was our political philosophy, the space we occupy in the political landscape. And that is the new declaration. Now, in a world where most political parties are really quite unprincipled, with little idea as to their values, our little grey book has actually stood us in great stead. It's served us well. It's given the SDP something very precious indeed, which is clarity, intellectual bearings, and coherence. Very valuable. Now, Michael Oakeshott said that politics was the art of persuasion, and I think he's right about that. The new declaration was certainly persuasive. And of the many endorsements, I think my favourite has been this. Quote, "I couldn't have dreamt of doing such a good job myself and didn't want to change a single comma. I thought it was such a true transformation." David Owen meant a lot to me. So we went on from that, building more foundations, theoretical and philosophical. I think The End of Indifference is a phenomenal work of political economy, outstanding piece of work, and I think it's the sharpest critique of any political party in the country on what has gone wrong with our debt-based system, which has basically beggared the country. Our film, The 10 Truths About the Migrant Crisis, properly diagnoses the cause of the chaos we face and points to solutions. Our agriculture green paper, Farms, Fields and Food, is a timely call for ecological sense, healthy produce, and national resilience in food supply. I actually think our population is dangerously large in relation to food supply. Now, on many of these issues, the SDP is ahead. It's way ahead of the ruling parties. And all this policy work, all this effort went into, finally culminated in, Homecoming, our general election manifesto, which again, I think was worlds ahead of any other political offer put to the public. I'd like to offer special thanks on that to Ross Baglin, who is just stepping down as head of policy. But literally, I couldn't have produced that without him. Thank you. Now, our philosophy is important, but the SDP is not a think tank. It's a political party, and the currency of political parties is votes. And on that, great progress has been made. For the record, In the 7 years prior to 2018, we secured 594 votes in all elections. In the 7 years since, we have secured 196,428. That's a little bit different. We've contested 8 parliamentary by-elections, and on 3 occasions getting bigger votes than we got in the 80s. But sometimes even taking a tank to a by-election won't get you the results you want. We've contested 4 metropolitan mayoral elections, increasing our vote every time. In London, Amy Gallagher built on Steve Kelleher's efforts by quadrupling the vote to 34,000. Dave Bettany doubled our vote in South Yorkshire to over 20,000. He retained our deposit and came within 800 odd votes of beating the Tories, the governing party, remember, in Barnsley. We also beat the Lib Dems and the Greens in Doncaster. Phenomenal. Now, in general elections, we've also shown exponential growth. After barely registering in 2015 and 17, 2019 we fielded 20 candidates, getting over 3,000 votes. And this year, as you know, we pushed even further, getting 122 candidates across the line and 33,000 votes. And 6 of our candidates got over 1,000 votes each, 2 saving their deposit. But more broadly, and this is the important point in relation to where I started, you actually don't know how far you've come unless you started at the start. So more importantly, among full spectrum political parties in the UK, there is only the 5 major parties ahead of us. That's it, out of about 350 parties in the country. Phenomenal effort. But leading a party that hadn't taken a seat since the 1980s, my first priority a few years ago was actually simply to win an election. But where? And the answer came, as you know, in a young man called Wayne Dixon in a place called Middleton Park. You know the story. We took the seat from Labour in 2022, and we've added 2 more since then, and really haven't looked back. Now, a few years ago, people could have said, some people did say, well, we don't take the SDP very seriously. But I can promise you, the Labour politicians losing their seats to us in Leeds don't have that view. They have a different view. Now, there have been many highlights on the journey, and like a skimming stone, what I'd like to do is to mention a few. So these are the highlights. Patrick O'Flynn joining us as a member of the European Parliament. Receiving an email from Robert Malyn in early 2019 saying, Rod Liddle has joined the party. Breakthrough moment. David Bettany meeting a Liberal Democrat that wasn't a vegan. Actually, I'm not sure that's true. I think the BBC Verify probably needs to look at that. Updating the party's logo in 2022. Being the only party that consistently opposed pandemic lockdowns, and the only party honest enough to criticise BLM's rather flaky political philosophy. I think tripe was the word we used. The electoral pact with reform was also an achievement, a little bit controversial, and in the end, it was a bit like the supermarket trolley with the wobbly wheel, but we did it. I'd like to congratulate the brilliant work over the years on the party's Twitter and YouTube channels, engagement growing literally month by month and year by year. Another highlight, Wayne explaining to a member of the public the central problem with Labour's governance in Middleton Park. They don't do out. Mrs. Dixon's fantastic reaction to Wayne's win, which is the only thing that's really gone viral since. Getting all our candidates nominated and across the line in the general election and putting out 2 party election broadcasts this year. Phenomenal. The call for Andrew to fetch the dogs. I have some personal highlights. Being a regular on Mike Graham's show on Talk TV has been great fun. building up the SDP Talk interview series. I've really enjoyed that. Smoking rollies with Lord Glassman on the House of Lords terrace. Always worth remembering what Morris says. Quote, "The essence of politics is to retrieve the sense of home from the dehumanizing forces of the market and the state." I think he's right. Managing to persuade John Cleese over tea and cake to speak at our conference, after drinking 5 pints and smashing a packet of Camel with my favourite unheard writer. I only just made it. And reflecting afterwards on the surreal experience of spending an hour and a half with Basil Fawlty. Incredible. Being a part of Rod's Gang of Four pub quiz team in St John's Chapel in Weardale. Phenomenal. And seeing his reaction when we finally lost. Just don't say it's just a quiz and it doesn't matter. Don't say that. Defending Rod live on LBC after the Chancellor of the Exchequer had intervened about a controversial column he'd written for The Spectator. It was just a joke. Rod describing the other parties in the general election, the other parties' candidates, that is, as morons on the Telegraph podcast. I mean, it could have been worse. He could have called them imbeciles or idiots. What does this look like? Well, I've done a little film, so if you can run the film, we can see. Sometimes visuals work better than words, don't they? By the way, I'll donate £100 to the party if anyone can name the guitarist, bassist, drummer, and writer of that track. So that's the path we've taken. To be part of this journey is actually to have lived at a unique time in the SDP's history. Why? Because actually, interesting fact, this is the only period in which the SDP has actually grown, started at the top. And always remember that the SDP's revival is of us, in us, and because of us. We can be very proud. Not of what we've started or what we've completed, but what we've done together. And I'd like to thank every single one of you, particularly my core team of Valerie, Robert, Paula, Paul, and Ross. But to all our members, candidates, activists, officials, donors, all of you, thank you. So, the interesting thing is that all of this becomes history rather quickly. Everything I've described is already in the past. And we can learn from it, but really this conference is about the future. And it's to that we must turn to now. We need to be clear about our aim. Our aim is to build this party into being a national political party with a national profile, with a membership sufficient to compete in every single seat, and the resources to do so. And this is a huge task, I think. I think it's a bigger task than the one we've accomplished. And it will require a step change in the party's performance. I think success will depend on three things mainly: our direction, the necessary resources, and our values. So first, on the direction. I would say this, but I think our political bearings are basically broadly correct. In Britain, in terms of political parties, we are the post-liberal conservative left. We are the top left quadrant in the political compass. And under my leadership, that's not going to change. We are uniquely positioned. Why? Because most British people agree with the SDP on most things. The problem is, too few of them know us. That's the problem. Which gets onto the second precondition of success, the necessary resources. We need the means to tell our story. We need a professional headquarters. I think Hilary will have a few words to say about that. We need a growth in membership. We need a bigger annual income. It means greater support for the regional parties, which basically, the regional parties are the campaigning heart of the SDP. It means greater capacity in press and media functions. It means greater capacity in production and dissemination of materials. And it means a broader political leadership team. I think success depends on this. But there are also qualities, certain qualities that we need. It's not just about resources and our offer. We require loyalty and fidelity to the party, comradeship and friendship to fight and win together. We require tenacity. Progress will occur in fits and starts. There will be ruts in the road occasionally. And sometimes you just got to hold things together. We also need to show bravery. I think cowardice is the main problem among our ruling class and the cause of so many of our problems. We must stay on the high ground. I think the test for this is simple. We should never be in a position where any member of the public in a cafe or a bar would ever be ashamed to say they were a social democrat. They should be proud of that. I think that's it. I think that's the test. I think this matters because merit comes before progress, effort before achievement, and I think in politics, recognition and respect precedes success, something Ernest Bevin understood and said often. But I think going forward, there will be considerable uncertainty. I think the only certain thing is that the Labour Party will fail. I'm certain of that. But we don't know how reform will perform, nor do we know what progress Kemi Badenoch will make with the Tories. But we do know one thing. We must row our own boat and not get distracted by others in doing so. So to finish, the revival of the SDP is an act of defiance. It's an act of defiance against the way our country is governed, to spit back against the gale. But it's also an act of belief. It's an act of faith, if you like, that we can do better, and we will do better. A friend said to me recently, "I love the SDP. It's the soul of the country." I agree.